from the big boys like Facebook and Google and whatever to our little startup company called Neighbiz. And we had a 80% odd conversion to Neighbiz. And then thanks to Ernst & Young, I got in touch with the VC guy in New York, and he got in touch with the vice president of Bing, and I was invited to Seattle for a 30-minute, that's 10,000 kilometers for a 30-minute interview. But fortunately, the interview lasted about 4 hours, and I go back in a couple of months, so I think it was worthwhile. But the gist of it all is that in order to get people to come onto Neighbiz, we needed to formulate an ad technology that interested people and never, ever interrupted. And they said that was absolutely impossible, and then we filed a patent. And it just went on from there. So I think that if you are an entrepreneur, as I believe that all of us are, you have to be agile. You have to just have a look at the failures and think, oh, God, what can I do to sort this? And we do fail. I mean, I'm sitting here in a spectacular, very, very successful company, and I wonder how many of them have been like this from time to time. But I know that I have failed a lot, but those failures have pointed me ultimately in the right direction.
We just don't call it failures.
I think there's a very famous saying that I always use: we sail in the same boat.
Exactly. No, it's been a wonderful, wonderful trip, I must say.
Okay, that's wonderful. So basically your app Neighbiz is harnessing talent that maybe was not visible to the broader market before, because now people can see what is available in their area in terms of goods and services, and now you're just making it easier for them to support those businesses. It was essentially a type of investment when you're supporting businesses that are local. So how different is your model in terms of the technology from whatever else is out there?
I would say it is spectacularly different. I believe the word is disrupt, I always thought that was a bad word. But apparently it's quite a good thing. And I think it's set to disrupt the search engines as we know it. Thanks to the little hop, skip and jump from trying to get the unemployed working to finding a way to get consumers across the board to switch. They won't switch because they are naturally kind-hearted, but they will switch if there's something in it for them. And that's what I had to realize.
Okay, brilliant. So Phathizwe, another question for you. In terms of fintech investment, what do you think are the trends that are affecting the investment climate here in Africa? What do you think are things that VCs and investors are thinking about here, and where do you see that going?
You know, if we lean on what Jenny's done, and I think, and she does use that word disruption, which I truly love. I think what you find in Africa is a lot of the products that we have and the services that we have are very mainstream. They provide very good value, but they don't service everybody. You know, the people that you service may be 10% or even less of what is available in terms of a population. And the population doesn't require all of the features that come with, let's take a Facebook, for example. But they do need the same basic service that underlies that Facebook structure. And so what you want to be able to do is provide for that, what I call the unserviced market, using the available technology that's there and not compete with these guys who you can't compete with in terms of their checkbook, but B, you might price yourself out of the market. But what you then get when you're the small company is you get this opportunity to take advantage of this Moore's law. Because as you buy from your suppliers, you get far more, double the amount that you got 2 years ago. And sooner or later, your product starts competing in that mainstream space without you having had to put down the same kind of
Absolutely.
resource. And so when I think about the fintechs and the finance and the investments that are required when it comes to South Africa, that's what I think you need to see as an investor. You're not trying to invest in the next Facebook. No, you're trying to invest in a company that will service the people who can't afford Facebook. And then the technologies over a period of time will be such that your product all of a sudden is now competing with the Facebooks, is going mainstream, you're getting that scale. Jenny will probably tell you the amount of capital she needs. The growth is far bigger than she thought it was.
Sure.
And because now you're
Amen
relevant
to that.
and you're relatable even to markets that we thought were well established.
Yeah, I like that
That's so true.
that focus
So
on the
true.
unbanked and underserved, because there's over 500 million people on our continent who are unbanked and underserved at the moment, and it's exactly as you said, they can't access those services because the infrastructure is just not there, and you can't switch it on overnight. So they don't need a Facebook; they need something else. So in terms of innovations that can serve that market, how do you think that? What startup opportunities do you think there are to service those underserved people?
I think the technologies that are available today, first of all, are accessible, are cheap, and are within the appropriate education for anybody from a very inexpensive point of view to kick off a business. When I think about the stuff that we have in the Internet of Things, one of the example is there's a lot of people who have meters. Water meters in their households. We're going into a situation that is a drought situation, so we're going to have water restrictions. If you go over whatever your quota is, you get charged quite a lot of money. Us Cape Townians, they'll tell you how pedantic you have to be about your water usage. But yet, the people who are looking for a solution can't wait for tenders to be given out for municipalities to get to their homes when there's 8 million homes in a metro like Cape Town. So what a small business can do is in effect go and buy a meter, a connected meter that costs 2,000 Rand, go out to a home, install it. It is secure. It is something that will give information to not just the home user but yourself. And now you all of a sudden are in the service business. So you're not just installing water meters as a hit them and run. You're now offering an as a service supplement to what's traditionally a problem.
Okay. Thanks so much for that. Irfan, your company Uprise Africa, which is the crowdfunding platform, you guys must get a lot of phone calls from startups desperate for capital. Are there any startups in your portfolio or on the horizon that you think have massive potential to fill this gap in the underdeveloped and underserved markets, or what is your opinion on that?
We actually sit in a very strange situation because we don't want to be the guys who tell the startup that no, you will not get funded. But at the same time, from a regulatory perspective, we almost have to ensure that the onboarding process is very, very compliant. So, and it's not just startups. I mean, we've recently launched My Name is Riva. It's a movie. We are about to do a football club. We are about to do an insurance company which is worth $250 million. So it's not really startups. Like I said, on one side, because the investor in South Africa is actually looking for cash flow predictability. They're not the guys who want to find the next Facebook. They might just want 15%, 20% return, and that's not what a startup would give. So potentially we had to create products simultaneous to that, And coming to the previous point, and coordinating with Fintech, I'm personally very, very excited about Fintech in Africa. I think we do have the opportunity to leapfrog, primarily because, telecoms, when the SIM card reaches somebody, it needs profitability, it needs to make economic sense. But the average revenue per user in Africa was so low that it did not make economic sense for anybody to go out to those rural areas. As much as we say financial inclusion, internet connectivity, let's be real, we only want profitable connectivity, profitable financial inclusion. Now, because we have multiple products and multiple services, the lifetime value of a customer is increasing so exponentially, then more and more telecom providers, more and more fintech providers could potentially go down to these markets and take a much, much bigger chunk. People keep quoting M-Pesa, 40-45% of the country's GDP in terms of amounts is going through that. So we're sitting in a fantastic environment when it comes to fintech and just leapfrogging from cash to digital money. Not so much for 4IR in my opinion, but we're going to come to that.
Okay. Jenny, so you've had some really interesting conversion statistics when you look at your advertising figures and what you can compare the Neighbiz service level of success to bigger players like Google and Facebook and that sort of thing. And I was kind of floored when you told me that you can guarantee that business is going to get business. So tell us a little bit about, in this context of here in Africa, we kind of need to start smaller and scale it rather than trying to be the next Google. What has your experience been in that?
Well, I think the one important thing to note here is that when I started Neighbiz, I never for 1 second thought that I would be going up against Google or Facebook. Not for 1 second. Those are just boots that you grow into. And I think that if I had thought that, maybe I never would have started in the first place. But what happens is that passion just drives you and you get going. And then you wake up and somebody who's far more knowledgeable than you says, you know what, this is a great thing. And then you think, well, maybe it is. So then we did a road test. And out of 143 companies, we had, I think it was 83% that said, yes, we'll give it a go. And the smaller companies, I think one of the things we're particularly proud of at Neighbiz is that every single person that has a commercial incline, in other words, the persons that sell these little things by the side of the road, or if you're coming out of the Checkers and you want to tip the person R5, if you've got the Neighbiz app, you can actually do it. So every single informal sector that has a business can now have an e-commerce platform with Neighbiz, and it's free. Isn't that wonderful?
Absolutely. So what you're saying is that there's a lot of opportunity for economic growth on a small scale that can lead to something far bigger. Right?
You know, I thought Neighbiz would be a brand when I started, but now with the uptake in Australia and the US and hopefully the UK now, I think it's going to be a movement. That's what I'm gunning for. My dreams, we've only got one life, so I'm gunning for a movement here.
This is part of your no immigration plan, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I like that plan. Waheed, I think the last and final question for you. What do you think the things that are making Africa relevant to investors looking to invest on the continent? You've obviously had a long history of launching companies and startups here on the continent. What do you think the outside investors look for, and what would appeal to them, and what do we need to work on here in Africa to get more investment in fintechs?
I think if you kind of go to the territories that these investors are coming from, you'll find that they're highly competitive. A lot of businesses have matured. Some of them are central to the environment within those countries. You take, for example, Sweden. They've pulled out a lot of wonderful technologies that we enjoy today. Things like, and I got to give you this little thing, is that, you know, if you know Sweden, it's cold, it's a long winter, it's dark, yeah, and in the winter maybe not as socially friendly, but you're stuck in your home and you want to talk to your friend across the road, you can't get there because of the blizzard, so you invent something and they call it Skype, and then Skype came about, right? You can't make your way down to the CD store to get your favorite new kind of music, so they invent Spotify and you just stream it. So a lot of these inventions came out of necessity based on that environment. I think Africa, if you speak about Africa, it's its own environment and it has its own needs. And there's a lot of talent in the countries. And we talk about talent not only because we learn how to code or we get into IoT, but that we also understand the local environment. And therefore we understand the kind of solutions that are going to be driving our economies here. So the international community has this understanding that they don't know Africa like we do. They have money, that Africa has the need for that resource, and that if they come and collaborate with us, that there's an opportunity for them to fund the kind of innovations that suits our environment. And that is the basis of why so many innovation hubs and VC companies, including Seattle that's invited you over, because they realize that, you know, there's an environment here. Take, for example, Neighbiz, that doesn't necessarily suit the American environment. Well, maybe it does by what you're saying now, but it wasn't the need at the time. So I think that's driving investment here.
And at the end of the day, we have the fastest growing population, the most untapped market. We're the continent where all the growth is happening in the next 10 years. So where else better to be than in Africa? And on that, I will close the panel. Thank you very much.